lately. Basically, we're not. This isn't going out to all people on Twitter, is it?
Oh yeah.
Not right. Oh, then I'm not telling that story.
Just kidding. Oh, that's amazing.
I will let you know the rest of that story.
I got something private to tell you. Let's go live.
I had to, man. Oh, what is going on, guys? Let's go ahead and kick this episode off because we got a lot to talk about with this big news going on. Let's do it.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Chase Vernon.
What's going on, guys? Welcome on into another episode of Fantasy Intervention. But this get excited because this is a special episode. We had a massive trade go down, an absolutely massive trade with ramifications for multiple different parties go down. It was Carson Wentz flying himself out of Philadelphia and over to the Indianapolis Colts. This, oh my God, was insane. And the craziest part about this whole trade that went down was just the timing, because we thought that it could have gone down before the Super Bowl with the Bears. And then I guess something happened with Carson Wentz not wanting to go to the Bears. So then the rumors with the Colts started popping up. Jacob, I want to start out with you because you're the resident Colts fan. What happened? Tell me about it. Blow my mind because I need it to be blown right now.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say in Ballard we trust. He got it done. And he got it done without having to give up, this crazy, huge offer. I think with where Ballard was at, I've been saying this for months, is that he does not want to give up his 21 first because Anthony Costanzo retired. So he wants to draft a left tackle in the first round this year. I've been very, very firm on that. And he believes in drafting O-linemen in the draft, not getting them out through free agency. So I think Ballard was always in on this deal if he could find a way to do it without giving up his first this year. He was very steadfast. They wanted to give up a third this year if they could. Open to a second, ends up being a second that could become a first, hopefully will become a first, if we end up making the playoffs and Carson works out next year in what's a weaker draft class. I think with this spot, Jim Irsay, Colts owner, is all in on winning and contending right away. Ballard knows he has a roster to do it. Frank Reich has been standing up for Wentz, believes in Wentz. So let's get it done. I'm beyond excited. I think this is a totally reasonable price to pay for what's hopefully a franchise quarterback. Hopefully the team is great this year. We were good this year with solid quarterback play. And if Wentz can provide that or better, there's no reason to think that first wouldn't be quite late anyways.
Man, this is crazy. Like sitting there and looking at a third and then a possible, first, but most likely going to be a second. Who knows what the details are? Actually, do you guys have any of those details while we're here talking about it?
Yeah, so if Wentz plays 75% of the games or 70% and they make the playoffs, it's a first. So if all goes well, it's a first in 2022.
Very nice. Very excited for that. Jordan, how you feeling about this? Is there anybody that benefits significantly off the bat from this trade?
Definitely. The Philadelphia Eagles, for one, they're going to benefit because for all Wentz's pros that we have seen at times, we've seen just as many times where, let's say this past season, where I think he led the NFL in every possible negative metric for a quarterback. I wish him the best. Colts are a great franchise. I honestly do think it's a win-win situation for everyone. It clears up this situation in Philadelphia. It gives Indy that relationship with Frank Reich again, it gives Wentz that relationship with Frank Reich again in Indy. And, like Jake said, in Ballard we trust. There's a few guys at the top, like Vic Ballard, Ozzie Newsome, like when they make moves, you really kind of put faith in them. So I'd say the Philadelphia Eagles won't win because when you don't have to deal with a quarterback controversy, particularly in that town, you win. After that is going to be the Colts, I'd say.
Well, we saw Carson Wentz behind a bad offensive line this past year, which is the first time that Carson Wentz has had to deal with that. And when I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him potentially going to the Bears, you just brought up a win-win situation. I don't think that was a win-win situation. So we have Dave over here who's a huge Bears fan. Would Carson Wentz have succeeded behind a bad offensive line over there in Chicago? Or is there a better quarterback that you have in mind other than Carson Wentz at this point? Did you want Carson Wentz? Like, what's going on in your head right now?
Yeah, at this point, I think everyone kind of knows how I feel about Wentz. I wrote an article about it a while ago. I think that it's something that, would have sold some tickets and generated a little bit of hype for Bears. But at the end of the day, it wasn't something that was going to put the Bears in any sort of winning situation. So selfishly, I wanted him here because I think that it would have given us a better chance than some of the other available quarterbacks. But for Wentz, this is just a dream opportunity for him, reuniting with Frank Reich, getting to play behind an elite offensive line. Getting a team that has already established a fantastic run game. They've still got cap space too. So with all of these fantastic receivers available, like Allen Robinson and Chris Godwin and Kenny Galladay, and now we've got Jonnu Smith, even somebody like Corey Davis. You got to assume that they're going to beef up that pass catching core a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in Zach Ertz. As for who the Bears are going to go with now, could be Ryan Fitzpatrick, could be Sam Darnold, but let me just say, whoever it is, it's nobody I'm going to be too excited about at this point. I'd almost rather keep beating the drum and just bring back Trubisky on a 1-year prove-it deal because trying to switch up the quarterback play right now, I don't think that's going to benefit the Bears at all going into next year.
No, and it'll be interesting to see how the Bears actually pan out, this upcoming season. But back over to the Eagles side of things and everything going on with Wentz and some of these playmakers available. It's going to be interesting to see who they bring in, like Dave mentioned, because of the fact that we sit there and we look at the salary cap. I believe Carson Wentz is making less than what Phillip Rivers made last year.
Yeah, he's coming in, I believe, at $21 million. So the Colts, I believe, have $44 million in cap space remaining, and the only free agents really they have to notably re-sign this year would be possibly T.Y. Hilton, who I don't even think they want to re-sign. And the only reason they'd really re-sign him is if they whiff on the top free agent wide receivers. They probably will want to leave some room because going into next year, that's when Quentin Nelson's extension comes in. That's when Braden Smith's extension comes in, and they'll have to still extend Darius Leonard. But in terms of this year, they have tons and tons of cap flexibility. Oh, Justin Houston is the other guy they probably want to re-sign. But they easily have enough money to bring in a Chris Godwin or an Allen Robinson or Kenny Galladay, some of that wide receiver, maybe in the $20 million range, and possibly add in Zach Ertz or a Hunter Henry or a Jonnu Smith. Like they're going to make sure that Wentz has everything he can have to succeed, I think.
Now that's what I was going to ask. You've got to assume that Zach Ertz is almost a given with this deal, right? With him hitting free agency, him wanting to play with his longtime quarterback, you've got to assume that they're going to work out a deal for Ertz.
Oh yeah, there's like, if there's a prop that you can find for Zach Ertz free agent landing spots, it's like the easiest smash ever to take Zach Ertz because Reich relies his offense a lot of it around the tight end. Wentz obviously loves throwing to tight ends, and right now, like I'm a huge Mo Alley-Cox believer. In the event that they don't sign in a new tight end, I would certainly bring him in. I'd get him anyways because he's the only active tight end on the roster, and Reich loves 12 personnel, so I would go and get Mo Alley-Cox regardless. However, if you can go get Zach Ertz in there, especially on limited snaps, they can kind of use him almost like Tampa Bay used Gronk this year, where they use him as a red zone presence, use him a little bit more limited, save him up for the playoffs because he's a little bit old. I think he could make an impact still on this team.
I almost don't want them to go after Ertz, to be honest with you. Ertz and his connection kind of created a little bit of a rift in the locker room. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
The fact that he was just getting targeted constantly. Mm-hmm. Jordan, sit down. So it was kind of like he was, like it was just creating issues with other players in the locker room and that connection, and it could carry over. I understand the fact that Ertz did really well, over there with Reich and the system, but I could see him going after maybe a Hunter Henry, somebody that's a little bit younger and possibly could be cheaper depending on his, the market for an injury-prone-esque tight end. So Jordan, like who are you sitting there looking at, the Colts possibly going after in free agency?
I honestly would like just to echo Jacob on Mo Alley Cox. Like, bring him back. He's familiar with the system. Big guy. Other than that, I would probably want Jonnu Smith. Familiar system there in Tennessee, as far as what we're looking at, and if they get a true alpha wide receiver, I mean, again, you want to talk about prop bets. Go ahead and take the Colts now, if they have the room to do that. So, tight end, I would either look to bring it back in house, Ertz to solidify the relationship, or Jonnu Smith being the best, outsider to come in. I think.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the wide receivers too, like, it's going to be interesting to see who they get, and I think who they target says a lot about how they feel about Michael Pittman, because, right, so they're going to have Campbell coming back, and Frank Reich is like the biggest Paris Campbell cheerleader on earth. Like, he's going to be part of the game plan. I'm a huge Paris Campbell fan as well. The only thing that's been holding us back is health. I really do believe he's going to be part of the team's plans next year, and sort of he's going to occupy that slot role. Right, Michael Pittman profiles as that prototypical X wide receiver, but they didn't really use him that way this year. He was used a lot as a big slot. And then when Pascal came in, he would get more slot snaps. They'd move Pittman back outside. So we'll see how they use him this year. I thought he was a little bit unimpressive, frankly. He had some moments. The playoff game, he was really good. But to me, if they sign someone like an Allen Robinson or a Kenny Golladay type, who's that prototypical X, that would make me a little bit bearish on Michael Pittman this year. I think they would rather go after someone who can play that flanker role and basically step in as a much better version of T.Y. Hilton. Chris Godwin, I know, is the guy they really want to get, but I think they could go out and get a guy like Will Fuller, would be tremendous in this offense. He could stretch the field. You have, the stuff that they already do with tight ends with Mo Alley Cox and maybe a Jonnu or a Hunter Henry or an Ertz or whatever. You have Michael Pittman out of the X role, and then you have Paris Campbell doing a lot of that stuff close to the line of scrimmage, being the yak target. I think that would be a really fun fit as well.
What I'm interested in is now Jonathan Taylor, because Jonathan Taylor, almost to an extent, could take a hit, possibly, if they decide to put the ball in Carson Wentz's hands more often. Plus, Carson Wentz, we saw it last year with Miles Sanders. He targets running backs a decent amount, but nothing like Phillip Rivers. So we could see a target share go down as well for Jonathan Taylor. It's making me a little bit nervous sitting there and looking at the outlook for Jonathan Taylor moving forward. So, Dave, we'll start with you. Like, is this something that could be a concern?
I think both, RB1s on their respective teams. I think Miles Sanders takes a hit, and I think that Jonathan Taylor takes a hit. And I mean, Jonathan Taylor, he's just unbelievably talented. He's still going to get it done. I think that he's still, locked in as an RB1 for 2021. But rather than sitting in that, top three, he might slide down just a little bit. I think that playing with Phillip Rivers was a massive boost to his value, because Phillip Rivers every year just, targets his quarterback or his running backs at a higher rate than anybody else. But he's still got the offensive line. He's still going to get it done. If anything, this might put them in more scoring opportunities. So while his yards and his pass catching might go down just a little bit here, this might increase his opportunity for touchdowns. So you got a little bit of a balance there. I think that it does slide down. But the other wide receiver, or the other running back, Miles Sanders, I think now having a run-first quarterback with Jalen Hurts, I think he takes a huge hit to his value.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more there. And I mean, sitting there and looking at it, Jacoby Brissett resigns. This is going to be a nightmare for Jonathan Taylor, because then you don't have any goal line carries.
Oh my God.
He stole my soul last year. God, he stole my soul.
It's not going to happen next year unless Wentz also breaks his toe halfway through the season. I don't think Jacoby Brissett will be coming in to do the QB sneak play like he did for Rivers, but because that was when it happened, right? Like, it was all after the Green Bay game where Rivers just was playing on one foot for the rest of the year. So that's why Jacoby had to come in. I think that play has been retired. We also don't need to pay like $20 million to Jacoby Brissett this year to be our backup quarterback. But no, as for Taylor, I mean, we'll see. I think that his receiving work last year was a little bit overstated. He was really, really efficient, but he didn't actually get that many targets. It's just so happened that he basically caught every target that he had, and then it went for a lot of yards, partially due to flukiness, partially due to he's very talented, and partially due to Phillip Rivers being just an elite screen game quarterback. I don't think Wentz is going to be targeting running backs at as high of a rate. However, even before they signed Phillip Rivers last year, it was a big part of the coach's game planning to say that we need to get the screen game more active. We need to get running backs more involved in the passing game. I think that would have happened to some extent anyways. I think that that's going to continue to some extent. And probably it's a bigger knock, in my opinion, to Nyheim Hines and to Jonathan Taylor. He really didn't get a lot of the pass game work. I think his role is only going to expand. Nyheim Hines, I think, probably goes from someone last year where he was overall sort of an RB2, and he had weeks where he really gave you RB1 upside, to more of a RB3 flex guy who's kind of game script dependent. I think Taylor's still going to get obviously a ton of goal line work. I mean, we still have run the damn ball hats being sold all throughout the locker room and the world. That's still the identity of this team. You know, Carson Wentz gets to come into a structure, gets to come into a solid running game, a solid offensive line, and do his thing on top of that. But Jonathan Taylor is still going to be the heart and soul of this offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, you know, how they are involved moving forward. I believe 2019, Miles Sanders still had like 50 receptions or so, and Boston Scott had right around 20. So sitting there and looking at it, that's still a decent amount of targets, but you know, I don't know if the upside is going to be there. So Jordan, like, what is the upside of Jonathan Taylor? What's the upside of Nyheim Hines? Like, is there, you know, RB1 potential from Jonathan Taylor moving forward?
From Jonathan Taylor, absolutely. I could see this playing out almost like Cleveland has with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, right? So Kareem Hunt, as we saw as a rookie, he's all the tools, but Cleveland primarily used him in that receiving back, you know, that sort of second back, that role, that receiving back. But when Nick Chubb's out with injury, he's perfectly capable of doing that. I think John Taylor, you know, again, to kind of echo Jacob's point, is going to be able to fulfill that RB1 need at rushing the ball in PPR format or full, you know, half full. He will take a little bit of a hit there. But I see that kind of playing out like Cleveland's running game did this past year.
Well, the thing was Cleveland actually had a ton of volume, and adding Carson Wentz couldn't have taken the volume aspect out of it. And we saw Jonathan Taylor, when he got volume, he was all right. Like, he wasn't bad whenever he got, what is it? Let's see. When he was seeing over 15 carries or so from what I'm looking at. I mean, it started with the week 11 in Green Bay, 22 carries for 90 yards, 4 receptions for 24 yards. So a total of 26 touches.
And 2 touchdowns called back for holding.
That's him. Yep.
Yeah.
And then we have Houston. He had 16 touches. That wasn't great, but the fantasy outlook was still good. Then 22 touches, 20 touches, 18 touches, 30 touches, 21 touches, or 23 touches. I'm sorry. So sitting there, like, I don't know if he's going to be able to see that same volume, especially if they do include Nyheim Hines in this passing game work in any capacity. So, Dave, like, sitting there and looking at it, is there somebody on this roster already who benefits the most and who kind of takes the biggest hit?
I think that Pittman benefits the most, and I know, Jacob, you kind of disagree just a little bit here, but I think that Pittman is a wide receiver that can really, really benefit from having Wentz on the team. He's more of a down the field threat, and you know, we saw it with Mike Williams when he was in San Diego. They kind of have that similar skill set, and Mike Williams wasn't able to do much with Phil Rivers because Phil Rivers just didn't have that arm to push it down the field anymore. Wentz, for all of his problems, you can talk about the sacks and the interceptions or whatever, but that man has a cannon. And if they start pushing Michael Pittman down the field a little bit, I think that he could see a tremendous boost in his value. He flashed last year. He didn't really have the consistency, but I think that pairing him up with Carson Wentz could just be phenomenal for Michael Pittman next year.
How about you, Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you. If the roster stays as it is, I think Pittman benefits hugely. What would hurt Pittman is if they bring in, you know, another wide receiving option to play that similar role. But I think Pittman could benefit tremendously. I think the biggest beneficiary is probably going to be the tight end, frankly. So I'll say Mo Alley Cox right now, and I think you should buy him regardless of who they bring in. But I think they're going to bring in a free agent tight end. It's probably going to be Ertz, Henry, maybe Jonnu Smith. I think that's the guy that will probably benefit the most. I could definitely see a top 5 tight end, which, you know, pretty low bar to clear historically. But I could definitely see a top 5 tight end coming out of the Indianapolis Colts. And I think the biggest beneficiary is just Carson Wentz himself. We've seen a really high ceiling out of him. You know, I'm not going to expect it to be the QB2 overall like he was in 2017, but even going back 2018, 2019, if you check out the bar fight that I had with Steffi Smalls, we go over some of this, and he was that low-end QB1. I think that's what we can expect to see. You know, probably not going to get the crazy volume he had in Philly, because I do think Frank Reich's going to want to keep this offense balanced, but he's going to be a lot more efficient. I think they're going to score a lot of points, and I could easily see him be that, you know, low-end QB9 to QB12 type in fantasy that will be super valuable in super flex leagues.
Yeah, it makes sense. So I feel like we've kind of crushed the Colt side of things for this. So I'm going to start out with Jordan here. And we're sitting there, we're looking at the Eagles side, right? We're sitting there trying to figure out exactly what the Eagles are going to do moving forward, how they're affected. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is the biggest come up. Miles Sanders probably takes the biggest hit. But I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the Eagles draft, right? And outside of 2017, the Eagles have just crushed, like smashed the draft button on offensive player after offensive player after offensive player after offensive player in the first 2 or 3 rounds. First 2 rounds specifically. So sitting there and looking at it, like their defense has been completely just obliterated as of late. And it's because they're not replacing their defense with any players. However, with Nick Caserio coming in and looking at how he has developed his team with Frank Wright over at the Colts, when he took over, right, or when Frank Wright took over, they drafted defensive player after defensive player after defensive player and offensive lineman, like Jacob mentioned earlier in this draft. So looking forward, is Jalen Hurts, because they have smashed the draft button on so many offensive players over the past 4 or 5 years, is Jalen Hurts actually going to get help in this draft with the draft picks that they acquired, over this year and next year? Or is Jalen Hurts going to be, running for his life and trying to throw to Jalen Reagor, who obviously didn't pan out as well?
That's a fantastic question. They have to, because if they're serious about winning and serious at all about what they want to find out that Jalen Hurts can do at this level, they have to build the franchise the right way. If they don't, then they are playing the standard NFC East money grab, let's make our fans happy kind of role. Like Philly and New York and Washington have tough media, and quite frankly, a lot of them have blown it. So they really have to invest wisely with these picks, or they're giving Carson Wentz away, and they'll never find out what they could really get out of Jalen Hurts as an NFL quarterback.
So you're saying they do go offense on this with their draft picks this upcoming year, with their first, second, third round picks they acquired?
They have to at some point, because I mean, what are we talking about here? We're talking about him throwing to Jalen Reagor, sort of a bust. Like, I mean, the last time I still think of Alshon Jeffrey's best years in Chicago. Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson's like my age. So what are we giving Jalen Hurts? I mean, what are we talking about there? They have to. So they have to make moves, and they have to get someone beyond just Fletcher Cox on the right side, on the correct sides of the ball. They need some offensive linemen who can block. They have a lot of need. And if they don't invest it wisely, then this is just a waste of time. And, it's a big good luck to Carson Wentz on the way out.
But essentially, I mean, their defense is completely torn up. They don't have any skill position players on the defense outside of the front seven, possibly. That secondary has holes everywhere. They're also aging significantly, and they have some massive contracts that are going to be hitting the books very soon. So they need to replenish some of these defensive positions. They need to get, some edge rushers in there that have some youth to them. Yep. And like I said, the secondary is just obliterated. So I just don't know how much they can pour into the offense, because they're going to end up having a lot of these offensive players come contract time. If they do end up succeeding, trying to grab these big contracts, they're not going to be able to re-sign these guys. So Dave, are you sitting there looking at, hey, they got to go defense with these first 2 picks and try and rebuild this defense first, very similar to how they did with the Colts? Or do you think that they do try and add skill position players to help out Jalen Hurts?
I think that they're going to attempt to address the defense in the draft this year, because we already talked about it. They don't have the money for the salary cap. So because of that, I think that means that's just going to help Jalen Hurts' value this year. I think that you're going to see a lot of hero ball from Jalen Hurts. We know that he's turnover prone. Just got to take that with it. But I think that you're going to see a lot of tucking the ball and running. And I just looked it up, actually, because there was something when you watched the team with Hurts under center, it seemed like Jalen Reagor was a much bigger part of the offense. So I just looked at the splits really quickly, assuming that he was seeing more targets, more yards. But they are almost identical to what Jalen Reagor saw in games with Wentz and in games with Hurts. So real quickly here, in games that Jalen Reagor played with Wentz, he was seeing 4.9 targets per game for 36 yards per game. When he was playing with Jalen Hurts, he was seeing 5.0 targets per game for 35 yards per game. So you're within 0.1 targets of each other and 1 yard of each other. I don't think that you're going to see a huge boost there, but I think that Jalen Hurts is going to be forced to play a lot of hero ball, which is really going to boost his value. I had him at QB9 in my rankings because I was expecting Wentz to be gone, and I'm still very comfortable with that. I think that he's going to make for a very, very safe QB1 this year.
Yeah, it's interesting because Rager, they obviously wanted to get him involved in the offense. I mean, as a rookie who needed to develop and still has, some stuff he has to fix, he still
Can't fix small hands.
God, he drops the ball so much. I don't even want to get into that because I am not a Jalen Rager fan, and I'm going to scare everybody off the podcast that likes him. But essentially, he's had 4 more targets in every game outside of 2 this season. So one of them came with Jalen Hurts. But sitting there and looking at it, Jacob, is Jalen Rager going to be the answer, or do they need to draft another player this year or the following year in the first 2 rounds and possibly waste another pick because they haven't been hitting on the wide receivers? They have JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
No, he's done. Oh, we don't talk about him. He's done.
No, but I'm saying that's who they've been drafting was players like this. I mean, outside of, let's see.
Yeah, I actually believe in Fulgham. I actually think Fulgham's good, and I think Doug Peterson is just a clown. I think Fulgham can actually play. I'm not saying he's like an alpha wide receiver, but he was significantly better than the jabronis they were rolling out after they got rid of him. I'm pretty comfortable with Fulgham, at least as their 3. But I'm also a big Rager.
Jalen Rager, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. We have Mac Hollins. We have Nelson Aguilar, Jordan Matthews, Josh Huff. They are really, really bad at drafting wide receivers.
It's disgusting.
It's remarkable. I mean, it's as for whether Jalen Rager is the answer, I think Jalen Rager is a answer. I think that he's not the answer. He's a stretch Z receiver. He's not the X guy. He doesn't define his routes very well. He's not a guy who's going to be able to beat consistent press coverage. He's not going to be able to beat bracket coverage. He is a guy who can provide a lot of explosive plays, and he works best when the attention is taken off of him. So if he's able to play the flanker role and they're able to get an X receiver who isn't actively mummifying on the field like Alshon Jeffrey was last year, then I think Jalen Rager can have success in his role. He's still super, super young. He was one of the youngest wide receiver prospects entering the league last year. He was battling injuries all year. So I'm okay giving sort of a partial mulligan for Rager, and he can definitely be, a part of the solution there, even if he's not the solution. But first off, in terms of where they draft, I want to address the elephant in the room, the PFF elephant in the room, where they keep saying they're going to take a quarterback at number 6 overall, or even that they're going to trade up for a quarterback. That would be the stupidest decision any organization in the National Football League can make this year is for the Eagles to draft another quarterback, drop them into this shit pile of a situation that they have, and say, hey, man, go to work, buddy. Oh, and if you don't work, then you're a bust too. Absolute disaster. It makes no sense. They have nothing on offense. They have nothing on defense. They have no cap space. If they bring in another quarterback, that quarterback's set up to fail. The Eagles are going to suck this year, no matter what. I'm sorry if there's Eagles fans here. I see Fly Eagles Fly for life is in the chat. I support you. I wish you the best, but I'm sorry. Your team's ass. So it's not going to happen. I would ignore defense because they're not going to win this year. What could be important this year is they can find out if Jalen Hurts is actually the answer. So to me, bring in some offensive line help. Bring in another wide receiver. Let's find out if Jalen Hurts is the solution at the quarterback position, because that's the most important position on the field. If he is, now you go into next year with your own first, the Colts first, and your own first is going to be pretty good, by the way. Then you can figure out, the defensive side. And if Jalen Hurts is not the answer, maybe that's when you go quarterback. But going quarterback right now and just tossing, Justin Fields or Zach Wilson into this situation, no, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. It didn't work for Wentz. It didn't work for Hurts. All you're going to keep doing is playing QB shuffle, and you're going to be the Bears.
All right, so Austin, real quick, I want to address this because I've been a Washington fan my whole life, and honestly, I just renounced my fandom this past season. It's okay to suck. It's better to suck than to sit there in the middle and just flounder without having, top end draft picks and without getting studs on your team. So honestly, the Eagles probably should suck this year. They should. And they should wait to draft a quarterback. I honestly think that they could trade Jalen Hurts for potentially 2 first-round picks to the Bears. That's as far as I could see them going because they don't have an offensive line. The Bears don't. They need somebody that can escape pressure. So maybe they trade away Jalen Hurts, get 2 first-round picks, and then they can draft a quarterback then.
Are you just trying to piss me off, Jace?
A little bit. But no, but sitting there and looking at it, it's going to be very interesting as to where the Eagles go and how they approach this almost rebuild, which is what I would hope they would do because they do have a new coach. They have a new system. We have to wait and see what they're going to do because, we're, a year maybe two removed from them having one of the most dominant offensive lines and one of the most dominant defensive lines. So they still have the talent there. It's just age talent. Normally with age talent, as we know very well because of the Printo, the Printo policy or whatever? Principle, yeah. Anyways, with that being said, with Jacob, it's interesting to see, like, with dynasty teams, how we know when to rebuild. And this would seem like the perfect time for the Eagles to trade off some of their assets and try and rebuild this organization from the ground up. So, Jordan, we're going to start out with you. Where do you see the Eagles going, or where should the Eagles go if you were the GM of the Eagles?
If I'm the GM of the Eagles, I do exactly what I said. You know, you find out what you have in Jalen Hurts. So you invest your picks in defensive line or offensive line. You find out. You bring in a guy like Corey Davis, who's proved that, you know, he is that receiver who can get downfield. If Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, is going to win games and be successful as quarterback, they should be low-scoring, controlled games. So you also have to cover the defensive side of the ball. They have Fletcher Cox up front. You know, like we've said, they're duct tape and plywood up front on defense, and even worse in the back. So you got to get somebody to address the back, whether it's through free agency or the draft. So that's what I do personally. I invest my picks wisely. I bring in proven talent to help my offense and support my quarterback and fill the gaps in my defense.
Dave, are you on the same page with that? Or are you just trying to, kind of piece things together as you go?
Well, I think the Eagles are just in a terrible position right now. The best asset that they had was a 28-year-old franchise quarterback that they just got a second and a third rounder for. I mean, I don't think when you're looking at Jalen Reagor, potential first. Potential first. But I know that you said that, Jalen Reagor for 2 firsts, and that could have been a little tongue in cheek, but realistically, he was a second-round quarterback that didn't look that great in his opportunity last year. So I don't even know if Jalen Hurts is that much of an asset. All their first-round picks have kind of been bust at this point, and then all of their biggest difference makers are aging or on big contracts. So I don't think that they really have a lot right now. The only way that they're going to be able to really rebuild is through the draft, and their history of drafting players has not been good. So when you look at their salary cap situation, you look at the players that are currently on their payroll, and then you look at the young guys that are on rookie contracts that could potentially be valuable, they just aren't really that good. So the Eagles, they're going to have to pull some magic over the next few years if they want to do this rebuild right. They are not in a good situation right now.
No, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the salary caps they have and their ability to kind of move some of these contracts, and they're in such a bad spot. Like Howie Roseman was trying to pull his best impression of, Mickey Loomis and the GM manager over there for the Vikings. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but
Spielman.
Spielman. Thank you. So he's trying to pull his best impression of that, and that is not looking good. I mean, looking at the dead cap, their top, what is it? Top 6 contracts right now, they would actually lose money. They would have to take on a bigger dead cap hit than what they would pay the base salary of, which is not something that you normally see because all these guys are locked in for longer term contracts. The good news is that they're all pretty much on the offensive line. Bad news is that you're not really able to do anything with it. Or offensive, defensive line. I don't know if I said both those, but I mean, Zach Ertz, you can't cut him. He's got $7,800,000 in dead cap. Meanwhile, his cap hit this year is $8,250. I mean, it's
8
not
million.
8 million. Oh, did I say 8,000? $8,250,000.
But his value per team is closer to 8,000, I think.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm just sitting here and I'm looking across it. I mean, Derek Barnett, they could cut or trade. There's nobody. I'm sitting here and I'm looking across it. They are stuck this year. They are stuck.
I guess the move that they might potentially be able to do is, offload some of these veterans to some contenders and hope to get some picks. But I mean, realistically, I just can't see anybody taking on Fletcher Cox with a $23 million cap hit, Brandon Graham with an $18 million cap hit. It's not going to happen on the trade market.
The dead cap, they can't do it because they would have to take on the dead cap. So they would actually still be paying him for salary for this year and for next year. They can't get off that dead cap hit. Very similar to how they saw the $9 million hit from Carson Wentz. Yeah. They would actually see a more expensive hit than what it would be to actually keep them on the team.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. If they were to cut Lane Johnson or trade him, which obviously they wouldn't, but yeah, they'd be losing 3 times what they'd be paying him this year if they get rid of Lane Johnson.
They're stuck.
Okay, here's my view though. And it's an ownership problem. It's not how well, there's a lot of things that are Howie Roseman problems. For instance, the roster is a Howie Roseman problem. But the thing is, like, Roseman won't do what's necessary because he's trying to save his job, which he shouldn't have anymore, but he's attempting to salvage his job. So he's not going to move on from Fletcher Cox or Lane Johnson, whatever, because he's going to try and put together a winner. But realistically, like, what are the Eagles going to accomplish wasting, the last couple years of Fletcher Cox's career, of Lane Johnson's career? Those guys aren't who they once were. They're still quite good, though, but they're not going to accomplish anything on this sorry-ass Eagles franchise. So, I mean, what they need to do is they need to give Howie Roseman a big pink slip right before the draft to make sure he doesn't screw it up again. And then, they can move out some of these assets. Use the dead cap to your advantage, in my opinion. Like, in my article series, I talk about leveraging your suctitude, and that's kind of what the Eagles can do. They can't win anyways. So those are more attractive trade assets because the Eagles would have to take on the dead cap. If they're trading Fletcher Cox, the team getting Fletcher Cox doesn't need to pay him $23 million. They only need to pay what's left over because the Eagles are eating a lot of that salary because of the dead cap, right? It's similar to Wentz. The Colts aren't paying for that full salary. So if they wanted to, they could actually trade a lot of these assets. Just eat the dead cap. They're going to suck regardless for like 2 years. And, do what the Browns and the Dolphins did and actually embrace really rebuilding from the ground up, because they're trying to rebuild on the fly. And it's just been an absolute disaster. So if they keep trying to rebuild on the fly, Eagles fly, it's not going to fly. So,
well, this could actually give them the chance to, back to Jordan's point of piecing this back together, it actually gives them an opportunity to see if they can win with Hurts at this point in time, and then just purge the whole entire roster in like 3 years from now. Now, this could be at the expense of Nick Caserio, but at this point in time, like, it almost makes too much sense to just go ahead and run with what they have to an extent. Jordan, can you like elaborate on exactly what you're talking about with trying to piece this together?
Sure. Like, we'll never know what Jalen Hurts is going to be unless they invest.
I think we're losing Jordan.
Oh boy.
So what they need to do is maximize those assets. And I
think we're losing you, Jordan. So yeah, essentially, like, if they maximize the assets that they already have, they wait for these contracts to kind of come off the books, and then they get it to a point where they can move some of these guys. Not only would they end up benefiting from compensatory picks, along with, picks that they could get in trades for some of these key players that could be coming off the books. I kind of like that aspect more. And like I said, I mean, it's going to be at the expense of Jalen Hurts, but even if you go into a full rebuild at this point, that's pretty much going to be it. So let's go ahead and get out of here. Let's go ahead and finish off with our last take each from this, from the whole entire scenario, not just the Eagles, not just Carson Wentz, our whole collective take. Dave, final say. Let's go.
Well, I'm going to have to eat some crow here on my tight end rankings. I was very presumptive when I put Cole Kmet up at tight end 6. That was assuming that Jimmy Graham was gone. That was assuming that Carson Wentz was coming to the Eagles. So I'm going to eat a little bit of crow there. I still have him as a low-end tight end 1, but with Carson Wentz not coming to Chicago like me and so many other Bears fans assumed, I think that that's going to be the biggest change that I'm making from this is sliding Cole Kmet down in my rankings. Can't make it Jacob? One full show without mentioning Kmet, right?
No. All right, Jacob, what you got?
Like, in September of 2018, it was a dark day for my fellow Colts fans. Ballard had come in, Reich had come in, and finally this roster had gotten to a point where we were fully ready to contend for a title. And with Andrew Luck retiring, we have been, Valentine's Day just happened. Assume you were the best boyfriend ever, and you're trying to cook your significant other this really romantic meal. You had all the sides ready, you had the vegetables ready, you got a beautiful bottle of wine, and then you realize about an hour before the dinner's supposed to start that you don't have the steak anymore. And that's been the Colts for 2 straight years. They didn't have the steak, and so you can serve up the best garnishes, the best meal, the best ambiance that you can do, but if you don't have the steak, you can't win shit. And Carson Wentz is going to be the opportunity for them to finally put the main piece back in that entree and see if they can come up with a championship. So please, Carson, I have been defending you online in these streets for a long time. I have been dealing with the trolls. I have been embracing the shrapnel. I have manifested this trade into existence. Chris Ballard, I would trust you with my life. Carson, I love you. I've already ordered your jersey. It was like the first thing I did. Please do not fail, because so help me God, if the Colts suck this year and I have to listen to Steffi Smalls say I told you so, I don't even know how I will be able to log in ever again. So if you want to remain on Twitter, Carson, please be good.
I totally thought that you were going to go a different direction with that. When you were you're setting up a Valentine's Day date and you're cooking this dinner, and then you're going to say, and she doesn't show up. Well, that was Andrew Luck. And so you got to find your best side piece, and that's Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz can be a great side help for us.
All right. Jordan, what you got, man?
I think this will be great to watch Jalen Hurts in his first full year as a starter on his own, and sending Carson Wentz back to the Midwest with Frank Reich is going to be a blast to watch. He has all the tools, so wish him luck there, coming off an injury and just one godforsaken year at quarterback. And, whenever a DC guy like myself, who is also around my Washington football team fandom, can throw any mud up 95 a little bit, but it's always a little bit of fun. So I hope to see how the season pans out.
Yep. My biggest takeaway is, damn it, I really wanted to see Jameis Winston land there, and now I don't get to watch it. So disappointing. Anyways, God, Jameis Winston up there. I also wanted to see
Jameis on the Bears.
I wanted to see
I would love
Darnold. That would actually be pretty sick, because he can deal with pressure. The Bucs haven't had a good offensive line up until this past year.
And he'll throw picks if there's pressure or no pressure. So what's the difference?
I don't think he's going to be able to outthrow Darnell Mooney. So
right, and he can see now. He can see.
I
don't care if he throws 30 picks. If he's going to throw for 4,000 yards, I'll take it. Bring him on.
There you go.
4,000. Try 51 his last year that he
All right. Baby steps. We've never had a 4,000-yard passer. So let's clear that hurdle first.
Look, he'll throw for 5,000, and that doesn't even count how many yards he throws to the other team. If you count those, it's 6,000.
Anyways, guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of here real quick. Where can we find you? Start out with Dave.
You can find me at Dave Kluge _FF. That's Dave KLUGE _FF. You can find me on Fantasy Pros, and you can find me on Fantasy Intervention, bringing you content all off season.
Jacob.
Yeah, on Twitter, FF _RTDB. You can find my fully completed series now on 12 steps to rebuild your team into a dynasty up on Fantasy Intervention, and probably coming out within the next couple of days, I'll have a new article on Carson Wentz. It'll be a little sentimental, so please tune in for that.
Oh, God. All right. Jordan, what you got, man?
On Twitter at Santos L, the letter L, Halper 83, and at Fantasy Intervention for all my fun content and writing.
Love it, man. You guys can go find all of our content over there at youtube.com/fantasy intervention. On Twitter, we're at joinourcircle_. That's right, joinourcircle_. And then you guys can find me over there at FF_intervention. I don't really do anything. You guys should just go follow the team, because I'm just doing the stuff behind the scenes. I don't have time to get out there. So go follow the team and go follow at joinourcircle_. Make sure y'all hit subscribe. Thank you all for listening, and thank you for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life.